Well, hey there, and welcome to episode number 1 of Groove, the No Treble podcast. My name is Mitch Joel. It's Thursday, January the 8th, 2015. Let's get on with the show. So, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Robert Trujillo, and I am a bass player.
You are the bass player, my friend.
I'm one of the bass players, one of many, I've adopted the low end for a few years now, and I'm proud to say that I've definitely experienced a lot of my dreams on this instrument with a lot of incredible musicians all across the board, so I feel blessed in that sense.
Of course, most recently, what I consider to be the Metallica, I consider Metallica to be, I think that, or you will go down as being the Led Zeppelin of my generation. That's what I feel.
Yeah, thank you for that. I feel fortunate because one of the things that is really special about playing in Metallica is that actually the members of Metallica enjoy being creative, enjoy challenge, and all the things that most bands, as they get a little bit older and a little deeper in their career, people, they get a little bit lax in terms of wanting to write songs. I mean, you'd be surprised how many known bands actually start writing with outside writers, and stuff like that, and aren't actually writing their songs anymore. With us, it's kind of the opposite. We've got so many song ideas and riffs and bass lines and whatever. I mean, it's just abundance of ideas musically from years and years of jamming, that the hardest thing is like trying to eliminate, and it's like a process of elimination when we write. So it's just great to be with an inspired group of kind of old guys,
I want to unpack that a little bit, though, because you said something. You said it's great to be with a bunch of guys who enjoy being creative. And I mean, that's really the space that I'm so interested in exploring, in particular with people like you and bass players. So when you say enjoy being creative, is it strictly in the sense of coming together as Metallica and pounding it out, or is it the sort of 360 degrees of what a life means in Metallica? Because you are somewhat freer in the sense of a day-to-day schedule. You don't put on a suit and go to a job. You can explore different areas because you have access to other types of art forms and creativity. So when you say like they enjoy being creative, is it as a unit creating songs, or is the lifestyle, or is it both?
I think it's a little bit of both, but as a band, when I say that, I think about the film Through the Never, the 3D movie we made. I guess it would have came out last year, but that's in a lot of ways it's a creative adventure. I mean, we oversaw the narrative for the most part, and the stage production and a lot of that, and it took a couple years out of our lives, and those were a couple years that we really needed to be writing. I mean, a lot of the fans have been waiting for a new album now. It's been, I think, must be about 5 years or something. I can't even remember. I mean, put it this way: in the time that we made Death Magnetic, as far as creating and writing the songs, till the time that we finished touring it, there were 5 children born. I mean, wow. That's amongst us. And it's kind of crazy, wild, and funny. But I think the thing that kind of throws us off is we get caught up in our own creativity. So whether it's making an album, recording an album with Lou Reed, or creating a 3D film, those are creative projects. Those are challenges. Those are things that I guess we're not necessarily supposed to be doing. And in the world of rock and roll, it's like working with Lou Reed for us was a really special moment. He's an icon. He was an icon, and it was especially for, I think, Lars and James. It was really going outside the box for them, and in being kind of in that creative bubble that Metallica has, and as writers, stepping outside that to work with an alternative icon, really a rock and roll icon, I want to say, and being maybe possibly humbled by the fact that we're not the bosses, they're not the bosses. There's another guy who's going to be the boss, and we're going to work with this man. So I'd say our derailment, or our sort of getting thrown off the path, was definitely based on creative challenges, or touring, trying different things, like you said, the Request show, or playing Ride the Lightning in its entirety, or the Black Album, celebrating that, the Fillmore. We did a 30-year anniversary, 4 shows at the Fillmore in San Francisco, where we played songs that Metallica had recorded, centered around other artists like Diamond Head or Danzig or Black Sabbath. And we actually invited some of those members, or all of those members, to come up and play those same songs with us. Now, who does that? I mean, we're not making money. We're losing money. I mean, it's like we're doing it because Metallica loves to take on the challenge, and those are challenges that would usually scare people. So we take the hit. A lot of people don't know that. They think Metallica, oh, rich rock stars, but those things cost money. We take a hit and we lose. Even our festival, Orion, we didn't make money off that. We lost money. But hey, at the end of the day, it's fun, and we can only try.
That's a really interesting anchor of creativity. And when you have resources, obviously you can try bigger, and the risk is bigger and the reward can be bigger as well. The Lou Reed album, and obviously since his passing, perhaps the prism of it has somewhat changed. I mean, as a human being who just loves Metallica and loves bass and loves music, I can appreciate the creative experience sitting back and watching. There's a lot of pounding on that in terms of what people thought of the album. And like I said, post Lou Reed, maybe people's perception might change a little bit. But I watch that as a person. Like, I consider myself creative in my writing and the work that I do, and I can only look at that situation and go, like, it takes a ton of vulnerability and courage to do something like that and put it out there. And even hearing people's reactions to it, and for sure some people loved it, but there was a lot of, let's call it negativity, I guess, around it. But you guys being satisfied with the creative experience is an amazing place to be. But I guess it is tempered with the fact that because you're so big and the expectations are there, it's got to be hard as somebody putting their heart out there to also hear back. I mean, thick skin, thin skin type of thing, right?
Right, and that's historically always gone on with the fan base for Metallica. Everyone at a certain point in the journey has been upset with Metallica and songs that have been written, or Metallica collaborates with a class, with an orchestra, and goes and does an album with an orchestra. People are like, oh, what are they? What is that? You know what I mean? Or back in the day, it was like Metallica has a ballad, on their song, on their album, and people were upset about that. So it's always something. Or you can't hear the kick drum or the bass on Injustice for All. Saint Anger, they forgot to turn on the snare. There's all these weird little things that at some point kind of have its place in the lore of Metallica, or the frustrations, on the fans. But at the end of the day, it seems like a tug of war here and there. But, the fans always seem to come back. And I get excited because I feel that my first real launch with the band was with Death Magnetic. and it was at a very special time. It was at a time when the band was ready to re-embrace the thrash and the energy of that particular style. And at the same time, the four of us coming together to be creative, collaborative, in the spirit of that. Even though that album took a long time to make, Death Magnetic is the most, in a lot of ways, the most successful album since the Black Album. So it's a challenge because the album before that, Saint Anger, didn't do quite as well, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that. But the band is still proud of that record, even I mean,
I often get in fights because I like that album.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I was having a discussion about it recently, and my feeling on Saint Anger was really sort of, Bob Rock's not a bass player, and he did the best he could, and the band at the time was going through a lot of transitions, and I don't think that James Hetfield at that time was really so focused on diving into that album top to bottom the way he did with Death Magnetic or some of the other albums. There's a lot of stuff going on. So that's why I say with Death Magnetic and where I'm at now and where we are with the writing and everything, we've gone through so much, and I just feel like we've got a really strong launch pad now, and the first step for me was Death Magnetic. So now that we know each other better, we know our engineers better, working with Rick Rubin at the time was very important. He got us sort of stepping in the right direction, and things happen for a reason. So, you take the hits along the way, you get back up, you dust yourself off, and you just keep trying, and that's what Metallica does. It's a strong work ethic at the end of the day, and that goes right down to the techs and management team, and there's a lot of heart and soul that goes into this. And in a way, yeah, it's a big band, it's a popular band. People can call it corporate if they want, but there is an independent spirit to what the band chooses to do creatively and the decisions made. At the end of the day, Lars, who I consider the leader in a lot of ways. He's not going to let anything fly over his head in terms of decisions. He's always got his finger on the pulse, and that's kind of the way it is.
So talk a little bit about what's happening now in terms of writing songs, because you talked about, we enjoy being creative and we like the process. And I think writing songs when you're angry, when you're younger, you get older, you have kids, life, marriages, divorces, things, huge success. I mean, I often jokingly tell people, and it's probably not a joke, but you guys can play anywhere and sell out that has electricity probably. What is a songwriting, like what is the current songwriting process like for you? And then also, what's it like being, guys who are in the second half of life, not just sort of coming out of the gates all angry and frustrated?
Well, there's always a lot of things that you can be angry and frustrated about, There's no shortage of that, It's a funny thing because, and this is only my opinion, on the last album, on the Death Magnetic record, Lars and James Kirk had to come down to Los Angeles, and I think it might have been in the summertime, actually, and, the middle of the valley, Sound City Studios, there's a lot of traffic. It's a concrete jungle. There's nothing beautiful about that part of town, and you get sort of caught up in the heat, in the traffic, and the smog, and you got to take it out on your instrument, especially for those guys, who aren't as used to it as maybe I am, because I live down in Southern California, and I love Southern California. I also live by the beach, and I like to surf and stuff like that, but regardless, in making that album, it was like taking everybody out of their comfort zones and stepping up in tracking with that kind of angst and that energy. So I believe that even as we get into our 50s, there's still plenty of that energy left to make heavy records, and also it's a part of your DNA. I mean, I always say that I call them riff meisters, people like James Hetfield or Kerry King or Jeff Hanneman or Dave Mustaine. These guys grew up experiencing what they experienced. It probably wasn't all peaches and cream. I'm sure James was chased by gangs, living where he lived in L.A. Maybe that's why he doesn't have the best memories of that. I grew up by the ocean. We had the same thing. We had gangs. We had, you had to stick up for yourself, and you get caught up in a lot of stuff where I lived. But at the same time, even though it was the concrete jungle, we could go surf and skate in that, in that energy and get creative. So I believe that your inspiration is based on, how you came up, how you grew up, people that you hung with, what happened, whatever. All that stuff helps you write songs like, like Rain and Blood by Slayer or, Disposable Heroes by Metallica. You know what I mean? It's all part of the DNA.
And so where's Metallica at right now? Where are you at with writing songs? What are you thinking in terms of album release? When can, as you said, it's 5 long years with lots of great stuff in the middle, but the appetite is always there. What can the fans know right now, or is it still unknown?
Well, for me, again, my opinion is I'm having a great time, and we're having a really great time. I mean, it's actually fun. We've been jamming on lots of new ideas, frameworks, so to speak. Right. And James is getting into into working up melodies and experimenting on that level. But it's really like kind of, you work out parts, a process of elimination, and then you jam them out. We jam them out and you get them into your system, make them a part of you. That was one of the cool things that Rick Rubin had conveyed back when we were putting together songs for the last album. It was like, imagine yourself playing these new songs, and you have to prove yourself to these fans in this small little bar or club who you've never seen in your life. And so he was like, stand up, everybody stand up, and don't just, we could be in the studio, right? But it's like, stand up and perform these songs, make them a part of you, basically. And it was that kind of motivational, speech that really made sense, at the end of the day. It made sense because it's just too easy to sort of sit there and just kind of go over your parts. So when I was tracking bass, I was actually standing up and in rocking. Yeah. So anyway, the at the end of the day, whether it's riffs or just arrangement, lyrics, the whole kind of experience of writing a song, especially with Metallica, it's involved. It takes time. It's a process. When I played in the Infectious Grooves, it was a bit different because we would actually go in and we'd say 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and we would come out with 2 to 3 jams, song formats, blueprints, I should say, and we put them on a cassette tape. And then the next time we'd get together, we'd be in a studio recording the album. And Mike Muir, the singer back then, would have taken those cassettes and worked up the lyrics and the melodies. And see you in the studio. Next thing you know, we're playing them, and the drums would usually happen in the second take. We always wanted to catch the magic of the first take or the second take. Now, that's very different than what happens with Metallica, but every situation is different. There's different magic that you want to capture.
So if I'm reading between the lines, very, very early days of seeing where songs may lead, but still early days.
Right. Yeah. For us right now, yeah, getting back to the point, I mean, we're, we're basically in a kind of scenario where we're nurturing the arrangements, and everything really is nurtured. I mean, it's like the transitions, trying everything you can try. That's just how it is, and I think that's what makes Metallica's music great and special, because it's that kind of pride, and really like you're working on an art piece, and it's got to be right. And what does that mean? That means exploring. James always has a handful of words for one possible word. Maybe this word doesn't work out. Let's try these. It's a lot of work, and it's time consuming, but at the same time, it's important, and it needs to be done that way, because the end result is what we hear from Metallica, what everybody loves. If it wasn't that way, it wouldn't be Metallica. In the same way that if, like I was using Infectious Grooves as an example, that's how Infectious Grooves should make records. It should be the spontaneous energy and capturing that magic on sort of on the second take or whatever. But with Metallica, it's a different style and way to achieve a very special goal.
So, in all this, there's another thing happening in your life that I think is going to also help achieve a very special goal. And I'm going to go back with you a little bit in time, because we're similar in age to when I was 14 years old, and I decided that I was going to play electric bass, and I couldn't afford one, so I bought a used one, and it happened to be, I don't know what make, but it was Sunburst, and it had very flat strings on it because somebody had dug up the frets. And of course, I only found out and realized years later that somebody had tried on their own to recreate some form of Jacko bass that I somehow inherited as my first bass, and actually learned how to play on this fretless that had been defretted bass. And of course, within a short period of time, I was introduced to the ever-known album of Jocko. And listen, I live in Montreal. It wasn't like you could go down to the store and buy a Jacko Pastorius t-shirt. So I actually had a picture of him from a magazine, 8.5 by 11, photocopied, and I brought this down to a head shop that transferred into a sort of stick-on that I had put on a shirt. And that was my Jacko Pastorius shirt. And I'm trying to frame this because I think it speaks to when Jacko touches you, it changes you. And I became, at a very young age, 14, 15 probably, people didn't know what I was listening to or who he was. And to be honest, I don't even think I realized who he was or what he was about. Now, clearly, in the conversations you've had building up to this documentary that you've been very much behind and pushing and paying for, he also touched you miles away, different lifestyle than me, than other people, in a very profound way. When did you first hear Jacko?
Well, when I was in the late 70s, I basically really fell in love with music. And I even back to my earliest memories. When my mom and dad were at an age where they had a lot of different styles in the house. I can remember like it was yesterday, my mom dancing around in her hot pants and her elevator shoes to James Brown and like Motown. And I remember I was really, really connected to what's going on, that album that Marvin Gaye had made. And it was the feel of the music and the songs and the dynamic value of what they were. But I remember connecting with the bass, and that would have been James Jamerson at the time, and it was such a powerful statement. So, whether it was James Brown or Parliament or the Isley Brothers was the first concert I ever went to when I was a kid. My mom took me. It was at the LA Forum. I was super young. And I just remember everybody dancing in the aisles, nobody sat down, And the band that opened was a band called Wild Cherry, and their big hit was Play That Funky Music, White Boy. And it was just a wonderful experience. But at the same time, I wanted to see Led Zeppelin, I wanted to connect with Black Sabbath and all that. So I was fortunate to have grown up in the 70s and had access to a lot of different styles of music. And what happened with Weather Report was in the late 70s, I started to discover fusion, what you would call fusion, jazz rock. And the great thing about it was that the bass suddenly was more prominent. It was there were bass solos, and it was funky, and music was fast. And there was an element of heavy metal in there. A lot of that Al Di Meola stuff was just mind-boggling and exciting. And people started talking about this cat named Jocko. It was like, I always say that, the four letters, it was like Jacko, and I was like, wow, who's that? Yeah, some crazy looking guy, man, he's cool. And then I heard that first album that you're talking about, the first solo album, and I always say, hearing a song like Portrait of Tracy in a different way, but at the same way, was kind of like hearing Eruption by Eddie Van Halen. It was like, what is that? I've never heard a bass sound like that. I don't even know if that's a bass. It was like, what is this guy doing? And it was like, and it was almost like he came out of nowhere, because I had started hearing about Stanley Clarke, and I knew what he could do, and some of the other bass players, and then Jocko just kind of connected with me. And then when I saw him play at the Santa Monica Civic, when I think I was about 15 years old, 1979, it blew my mind, because not only did I hear his instrument speak to me a certain way and everybody else, but I saw him play live. I saw him up there, no shirt on, long hair, the crowd, the audience was there to see him. Majority of the people there were there to see him. And he reminded me of, people I used to look up to on the boardwalk, the surfers and the skaters, the daredevil, all the wild guys and that were cool, you know what I mean? And so he was that, but on the bass. And his energy and his stage presence really, really connected with me. And that was the good thing about living by that venue is, the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium is I could go see Ronnie James Dio, and I could go see, Jean-Luc Ponty and Al Di Meola with Anthony Jackson on bass. It was a very, diverse range of music that was coming out of there. I mean, when I was in Suicidal Tendencies, we played that venue. It was a dream come true for us, because it was the venue that we grew up going to, riding our bikes to, or my dad would drop me off and pick me up because he lived, a mile away or something in Venice. And that's how we grew up. So I felt very fortunate for that. A lot of people weren't fortunate to see Jocko perform, and I got to see him play like 4 times. So that's when I discovered Jocko, through that first album, and also Heavy Weather. Heavy Weather, Teen Town made a huge impression on me, and, like Havana or Palladium were songs that really connected with me. And it was the voice of the instrument and the edge and attitude that I witnessed.
And you take that with you through your career? Is Jocko always there in terms of your influence, your love, your passion for bass? Or do you sort of, as you go into your own career, Suicidal, Infectious, on and on until obviously, Ozzy and Metallica, does he go with you the whole way through, or does he go a bit to the back shelf and then comes back? I mean, how did he play in your life? Or is it just, it's always Jocko, he's always there, you're always trying to figure out ways to sort of play in that way, that unique way?
Well, the way it works for me is there's a couple of different ways to look at it. And as a composer, especially when I played in the Infectious Grooves, that music was completely inspired by Jaco Pastorius. And yeah, there was a little bit of Anthony Jackson in there, and some of my other heroes, but overall, it was Jocko who inspired me to write those songs with my band at the time, and my goal was to like try and capture the energy of Jocko's style, and whether it was utilizing the harmonics or playing the sort of a staccato, really staccato, funky, punchy, like back pickup kind of technique. And at the time, I was 25 back then, and I was so inspired that I wanted to take that technique and that style, and I wanted to intertwine it and fuse it with, other styles. So I was kind of bringing in that with, Slayer or the Sex Pistols or some ska or whatever. It was intertwining it and fusing it with various styles. So that was my first sort of connection as a composer, utilizing Jocko's inspiration. And then beyond that, even, there's moments, with Suicidal Tendencies where I was doing stuff with harmonics, and I was, kind of branching off and doing some stuff on the fretless bass. So it's there, I'll be pumping a part in a Metallica song, and I'll think about him, because he had a really relentless attack. It was a very physical attack. There was a lot of energy in it. It wasn't smooth. It was in your face. It was, in a lot of ways, it was like abrasive, like a pick. You know what I mean? Even though he wasn't playing with a pick. And I don't play with a pick much. I'm a finger player too. So there's a connection there. Now, as far as the performance go, we're all kind of who we are on stage. You become who you are. We change. We become, I guess an extension of rock and roll or performance turns every musician into something a little different usually. Some people get more mild-mannered and meek. Some people just go nuts. And I don't know what I do, but it moves me. It's like, if I'm surfing or something, I moved in a certain direction. Or if I'm snowboarding, I become whatever I'm going to become. Same thing happens with bass and performance. It just takes me, and I become whatever I'm supposed to become up there. It could be really funny and in a lot of ways, and it can be intense. But at the end of the day, as long as it's fun, And Jocko brought that energy out of me as a performer too, because that's how he did it. Like he says in the film, there's one quote that Bobby Thomas says. Bobby Thomas said every time they went on stage, he would tell Jocko would tell Bobby Thomas, he would say, take no prisoners. No prisoners is what he would say, and that's how I feel. And we feel, even as Metallica or any band I've ever been on. It's always been that same edge and attitude.
So I want to fast forward a little bit in the interest of time and help me understand the timeline as someone who really candidly doesn't know. At what point are you like, I'm going to help intervene? Like, where is this infamous Base of Doom and also movie? Like what's the timeline for you? Are you like thinking about the movie and then this sort of bass situation rises? Does the bass situation come out and then you're like, oh, there's a story to tell here? Like, what is the real timeline from you?
Well, it's very interesting because there's been a lot of strange moments in the last 5 years that I've been working on this project, and I've been working, along the journey. I've worked with Johnny Pastorius, Jocko's eldest son, various other people who've been involved here and there with the family. Bob Bobbing, who was a childhood friend of Jocko's and a producer on a portrait of Jocko the early years and in The Essential. A lot of people that very, very connected to Jocko, and basically, if I can go back 19 years ago. It's 19 years now. I had met Johnny Pastorius in Florida. I had met him through a mutual friend who I actually used to surf with in California, who was working at a bar as a bartender. And Johnny Pastorius came in and put a credit card down. My friend Russell saw his name and said, "That name looks really familiar. I have a friend in California who's a bass player, and he always talks about somebody with that name." And Johnny says, "Oh, well, that's my dad, Jocko." He goes, "That's the guy. He's got photos of this guy in his house in Venice, Venice Beach. He's got photos of Jocko." So that's when I connected with Johnny. And when I actually met him, when I was coming through town with Ozzy Osbourne. We were touring, and one of the first things I said was, "You've got to make a film about your dad, because he's got an incredible story, and there's so many musicians that really look up to him." And I'm not talking about just jazz musicians. I'm talking about punk rock musicians and funk bass players and heavy metal guys and all this. He's really inspired a lot of people. So that was kind of the first sort of step in the journey. And then every couple of years, I'd hear from Johnny, and Johnny would say, "Hey, we're working on the film, man. We're going to do it. We're going to do it." And then another couple of years would roll by, and it was sort of the same thing. And then at a certain point, Johnny Pastorius and Bob Bobbing came to see me with Metallica in Fort Lauderdale. And Bob, who's around the same age as Jocko, never heard much about Metallica, was impressed with the fact that there was a lot of people at this venue, and it's a hard rock show, and there's a lot of passion there. And how is it that this bass player, who he's watching and experiencing that energy, is really, really inspired and connected by Jocko? Well, he could tell, and he could feel that energy in the performance. And at that point, I started to sort of gradually become a part of the team. And I would have to say I adopted the project a couple years later, and decided that I would finance this, and we would get rocking again. I was living in San Francisco with my wife and kids, but then when I moved down to Los Angeles, I realized that there was a lot more possibilities, it seemed like there was a lot of the musicians that had worked with Jocko in past years, and there was a way that I could actually help this become a reality, to where it wasn't just every couple years you get a call saying, yeah, we're gonna make this happen. It seemed like I can do something here. I can help, and I'm feeling passionate about this, so I am going to help. And that's when I stepped in. Now, in regards to the bass, I know I strayed off of your original question, but I had to kind of go back and backtrack, if that's okay.
I love the story. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, so now when I say there's been a lot of interesting sort of magical moments that have emerged in this journey when I officially stepped on board, one of the things that happened was there was a situation. Until this day, I can't tell you the problems that occurred behind the instrument, or what, I don't know the details as to what happened between the family and the person who had the instrument. But what I do know is that the Bass of Doom was missing for 20 years, at least 20 years. And there was a situation where the family had found out that the bass was actually out there, that the bass had reemerged, and it was in New York City. And they couldn't...
Sorry, just 1 second for my clarity, Robert. Are you saying somebody had it, and then it was... something happened that bass moved from wherever it was to New York to someone else? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, a collector ended up having it, and basically it turned into this legal dispute. And it's a deeper story than that. But what I can say is that because of the legal dispute and the legal situation, the bottom line is there would have been, JPI, Jacko Pastorius Incorporated, would have gone bankrupt. And this is an instrument that the family grew up with. Johnny Pastorius refers to that bass as like the pet of the family. It was something they grew up with. They would see it on the shag carpet, on the floor. Never in the case. It was always like kind of like the pet or something. It was, it was just there. Grew up, was a part of their lives. And now, and then it was gone. And nobody knows exactly how it was gone or what happened in New York City at that time. Some say, Jocko claimed it was stolen. He fell asleep and the bass was stolen. I mean, there's different sides to it, and I'm not, the one. I wasn't there, obviously, and I don't know who was there. Probably Jocko's the only one that would know. But regardless of that, the bass was taken, and it ended up with the collector in New York City, and the family reached out to get it back, and that wasn't going to happen because that person felt that it was his property, and really all that amounted to it, as far as I know, is there was a lot of there was kind of debt. You know how it is with attorneys and stuff. I mean, it's like that just becomes a big mess. And so I basically, long story short, I sponsored the money to get the bass back, and it was a very serious situation, and it was a very serious commitment. I'm not a collector. I don't collect instruments. I love vintage instruments. Don't get me wrong. But in this situation, beyond the movie, even, I just felt that, it would be better to get that instrument away from the situation it was in, because it was causing a lot of frustration and emotional frustration within the family, and it was a situation that needed to get resolved. And plus, again, bankruptcy is not a good thing, although that's, and so I helped, and
so the situation can't be spoken of because that was part of your ability to acquire it, let's say.
Well, the basically, again, the situation, if I wouldn't have gotten involved, the bass would have been God knows where. You know what I mean? There was rumors that it was going to possibly go to Japan or whatever, but the family had no connection to the instrument,
right?
And they didn't have any say, and that was very frustrated to them. When I offered to help, we kind of made a rule amongst ourselves that any decisions made with the instrument would be collective. We would make decisions collectively. And I mean, half the time, Felix actually has the bass. He's recorded with it. I know a lot of Pastorius fans would have seen him with it in New York and in playing it and whatnot. And it's a beautiful thing, But I just, again, there's a lot of misconceptions. It's incredible. Sometimes I just can't believe. And I guess maybe I don't blame some of the people out there because they don't know the real story, as to what happened, and that I know the family and there's a connection there, and this is something that they really wanted me to do and to help them with, and but I've actually had people think that I bogarted the instrument, that I found out who had it, and I went and I purchased it, and not knowing that there's deeper side to it, and it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's completely opposite of that. It was like, and the family will actually they'll tell it like it is. I mean, we did there was an event at Bass Player Live, as most people would know about. I think it would be 3 years ago. The family actually flew to California, and I didn't even have to say anything. Johnny basically told the audience what happened, and he basically said, Robert helped us, reconnect with the instrument, and it was missing for so many years, and the person that had it was going to sell it. So any decisions made with the instrument are again collective, and again, like you said, it would have put them in bankruptcy and all that. So at the time, I helped, and that doesn't have anything to do with the movie. The film. By the way, the movie is not about the Bass of Doom.
Right.
And it's yeah. I mean, to be honest, a movie about the Bass of Doom would that'd be its own movie. I mean, that's a whole nother story. I mean, if you think about it, is what has this instrument been through? I mean, it had a life before Jocko, and it had a life during Jocko, and it was like, it took a lot of beatings in that journey, and
it's like the Red Violin, like literally.
It is like the Red Violin, and
so Robert, when you think about this instrument, is the family conversation, I include you as part of that it should remain in that, or is there a part of you that feels we got to put this thing on, like, I don't know, like a bad example maybe, but like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so that it can sort of almost be like laid to rest? Or is it one of those things where as a family, and again I include you in that, you guys feel like, hey, you should play it live, the sons should play it live? Like, has that conversation happened where it's like, how do we then sort of just let it almost like go and have its place where people can see it, admire it?
It's kind of a combination of both. I mean, I've played it live like once or something, and that was at Yankee Stadium, and it was a very special moment. It was actually kind of around the time of Jocko's passing, and Tracy, Jocko's first wife, was in the audience, and Johnny and Felix and Julius were all there, and but I love the fact that Felix is recorded with it, with the Yellow Jackets, and he plays it sometimes, and it seems like to a certain degree, we all get nervous about it because people steal instruments,
Yeah.
and so it gets very scary sometimes. If you take it out to a club or a bar and just start playing it, it's a beautiful thing, but it's also it could be very scary because we've all, I don't know about you, but I've had instruments stolen. I know Felix had his bass stolen out of a cab one time in New York, and that's when these situations, there's a delicate balance to all this, and
because it's a national treasure for bass players.
It is. It really is. It's been through a lot. It has its own story, and the good news is it's safe, and I think that the fact that it is safe and that Felix or any member of the family can play it or does play it or has it or whatever, and I'm just in a way I'm kind of the caretaker. You know what I mean? I'm like, I make sure it's safe and and protected, so to speak.
You're the paranoid one about it.
Yeah, I just make sure that and we all do. Don't get me wrong, because Felix is the same way.
I'm sure.
We make sure that it's in a safe place, and at the same time, it is an incredible instrument. It's got a lot of great energy, and it has a voice of its own. But again, the story and the history of this instrument is very, very special and unique. And like I said, there's people who have said weird things. Like I don't want to mention any names. One bass player said that he was very upset, maybe, or unhappy that it could be in the hands of a rock and roll musician. And in my thoughts, number one, it's in the hands of the family and myself. So it's not that. And the other thing is there's a backstory to it as how, we had to get that instrument and what went into that, and how it was something that was very important to the family. So there's a misunderstanding all across the board. And in a way, that night or that day when Johnny Pastorius, with Mary Pastorius and Julius by his side, spoke to that crowd in that room, everybody at that point seemed to understand and knew better straight from the source. Hey everybody, is this is what happened, and this man helped us. And I'm not one to go out there and go and tooting my own horn or saying, that's not what this is about. This was deeper than any of that.
Robert, I want to talk a little bit about the film. I think everybody who loved Jocko has read the biography. I think a lot of us know stories tangentially just through the years. And one of the bigger things that I'm curious about in this journey of making this film about Jocko is how you're balancing the early years versus what I would really call the tragedy of what happened to him in the final years. What are you doing to how is that story being told?
Well, it's a very delicate balance, and we're talking about at least my years in being a part of the production. And yes, I am financing this, but it's been important to me to try and get the balance. Make sure that the family is in a good place with this, because it's painful, especially for the loved ones and people that were close to Jocko, because in a way this film is kind of a way to deal with the tragedy, and but also to celebrate the wonderful, incredible moments along that journey that was Jocko's life. And that's the most difficult part of this is, Jocko's life was a bit of a roller coaster. He achieved a lot in a certain amount of time, and with that there was, a point where he in a lot of ways, whether it was because of the bipolar disorder, but things happened and he wasn't the same, and there's a lot of reasons for all of that. A lot of what happens with bipolar disorder it's curable. Not, it can be, you can actually maintain an existence, and there's medication, there's things that can be done. I've learned a lot now. I have a lot more respect, for people that I see, people that are homeless and stuff. There's a story behind them. It's deep. We should never make fun of anybody, or because there's another side to that. There's a lot of very special people that have had unfortunate things happen to them in their life. But with Jocko, he was such an amazing talent. But at the same time, he was a hard worker. He worked really hard. And Johnny, Jocko's son, even says, my daddy worked hard. He would have charts laid out on the floor, and he'd have a couple guys writing with him, and they would just be in full creative mode, and Jocko was just kind of at the helm, commandeering this body of music. He's very passionate about that, and like I said, going back to his what he brought to the stage in his performance, he was passionate about that. So it's a very intense sort of balance on everything, and I feel so great about what we have now. I really do. We had a screening at the Grammy Museum last Monday, so it would have been three nights ago. And I mean, Alfonso Johnson was in the audience. We had, some of the technical people like Brian Risner, who is Jocko's sound man, was there. He was the sound man for Weather Report, and we had people that you would respect in the lineage of Jocko Pastorius. And everybody just really, really loved the movie and connected with the film, and at the same time said that the balance between the fun and the humor, and then the sadness and the the inspiration, was very, very well done. And that to me says a lot, and that's important because that's also the most difficult challenge in making a film about Jocko, is trying to find that balance. And I feel that we have achieved that, and it's been difficult. Every year, at some point in the 5 years, there would be a treasure that would, appear. Something magical would happen, and that's why what I was saying in regards to the bass, or in regards to a few other things that I'll tell you about. It's almost like magic. It's like, how did that happen? Why did that happen? Wow, now we got to re-edit. You know what I mean? But that's okay because, it happened for a reason, and
these nuggets of creativity that spun into other things, like a great song.
Well, it's kind of like nuggets of treasures. I mean, at one point we had, yeah, I get what you're saying. No, because those inspire the creativity.
Right.
But
yeah.
At one point, Conrad Silver, who was a writer for Downbeat magazine and lots of other publications, and just a writer really connected to the jazz community and really good friends with Jocko.
They're quoted extensively in Jocko's biography.
Exactly. Well, Conrad, we had received a box of audio cassette tapes of never before heard Jocko Pastorius interviews. And how does that happen? And we were sort of at the end of what we thought was, finishing up the film. And no way. It was like, we got to go back to the drawing board here. And then at the same time, there were photographs that Sony had in their vault. And so Johnny Pastorius had received all this, and he was like, got these incredible photographs, and it was like, wow, it was exciting. It was time to like get back into the saddle and start working again, and then that, changes the edit, and the family, needed to be happy and a part of that too. So you're working, and all of a sudden you get to another point, you're like, okay, now we're ready. Now we think we're ready. And then something else happens. But in the last year, and this is where it gets really amazing, and this is important, Jerry Jamot, who is Jocko's favorite electric bass player, they had done the instructional video together back in the 80s. He moved to Los Angeles. He was living somewhere in Alabama, and he moves like 2 miles from my place in Venice in LA, and a mutual friend of mine who's a photographer was going to do a photo shoot with him. And I was like, excuse me, Jerry Jamot lives in Los Angeles? You mean he's alive? You mean he's like, it was incredible. And Jerry and I met. We became really good friends. We're still great friends. In fact, he does the Q&As with me now. And in a lot of ways, he's one of the stars of the cast members of the film. And he's just incredible. I mean, this man has played with King Curtis, Aretha Franklin, B.B. King. He just recently was awarded 2 Grammys that he was supposed to get from 1969. Okay, so it's like, and he's also reunited with Aretha. He's playing with Aretha Franklin again, and this has all kind of happened and stemmed from Jocko and from the energy of the film and the project and getting Jerry back out there. But we had to interview Jerry, and when Jerry was interviewed, it changed once again, just like Conrad's audio tapes, cassette tapes. It reinvigorated the spirit of the film and the writing of the film. Now, here's the other catch, which is pretty amazing. Joni Mitchell. Joni Mitchell, over the last 5 years, is like, where is Joni? Oh, she's not in good health. Joni, she's a recluse. All the rumors and everything. I end up meeting Joni Mitchell at a Grammy party, the Clive Davis party. I guess it would have been last year. And a mutual friend of ours who was out actually there, through that mutual friend, we became friends. So I became friends with Joni and actually hung out a handful of times before we actually got on the subject of Jocko. It was just kind of like, getting to know each other as people. She came to see me play at the House of Blues in L.A. and we earned respect, and I mean, she to me is one of the most powerful individuals on the planet, beyond music. She's really very special. And then Jocko, came into the picture, and she'd share her stories and everything, and she agreed to interview for the film. And this was when, again, we thought we were pretty much at the finish line, and there's Joni. It was like, wow, it's incredible. One thing I can say is it shows that people really cared about Jocko Pastorius, because so many people, ranging from Bootsy to Al Di Meola to Wayne Shorter to Carlos Santana, Flea, I mean, there's a huge list, and we had over 75 interviews, not all in the film, of course, but everybody wanted to share their stories, and we're very passionate about Jocko. So that's a beautiful thing. It says a lot. And unfortunately, in a 100-minute or a 90-minute film, it's impossible. I mean, to make that to tell Jocko's story in that amount of time, but to do it, you could do it like a 10-hour, you could do like 10, a series of 10 different episodes, it's that, engulfed. There's just so much. I have a story about Jocko, that what happened with Jocko and I, and it's not even in the film, it's like, because everybody that came across him had a great story. And there were people that were really great friends with Jocko. Jocko seemed to make everybody feel like they were his best friend, which is cool, But Johnny Pastoria says, you run into one guy who would hang out with Jocko one night, and that person was like, yeah, I'm Jocko's favorite drummer, and it's or guitar or whatever. He always made people feel important and valuable and loved in a lot of ways. So anyway.
It's a great story, Robert, and I think it exemplifies your passion for music and the instrument and the journey you've taken. And much like you trying to figure out how to cut everything down into an hour and a half, same here. I could spend obviously hours with you of areas that we haven't even explored in terms of your music, your creativity, how you see the instrument, where you see it going. So I want to leave it here with the promise that as we grow this podcast out, that hopefully one day you'd be kind enough to come back and we can really crack the nut a little bit more open in terms of you and your style. And I just want to thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for the music you create, because I think you know how many people you touch, but I also think you don't know how many people you touch. And so I wanted to say just thank you for all the music you create as well.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate that. And the beauty of it, I mean, like I just turned 50. What would it be now? Like, I don't know, about a month and a half ago. And I feel blessed to have played with the various musicians and work with people like Ozzy Osbourne and the members of Metallica and Suicidal Tendencies, but also even in Jerry Cantrell actually was really great too. But in my journey in life, just connecting with people from all over the world and being able to surf all over the world, and also this project with Jacko, to meet my heroes and become friends with those people, and to be able to show that I appreciate them, and vice versa. There's mutual respect, and I've made a lot of new friends, so it's been a positive experience, and it's been a long haul, but very rewarding, because I've met a lot of really great people in my career and in this particular project especially. And yeah, we'll crack the nut open wider, because there's a lot, and it's all good stuff, and we need to save it for the next round. So thanks for having me.